Happy Sunday and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Sunday, November 24th, 2024. The year is almost over. Jesus Lord. We were talking about the election just, a couple of weeks ago and wonder what was going to happen with that. Now we're almost up to the inauguration. But Val Atkinson is here to help me talk about all the craziness in the world. Hey, Val.
Hey man, what's up?
Well, same shit, different day. I'm telling you, Val, I knew that if Donald Trump won, we were going to have to start talking about him again. I was really fervently hoping that he was going to be in the dustbin of history and we were done with him. Uh, but a point that you always make to me is that Donald Trump isn't the issue, right? It's not him singularly. He is a person that talks a lot and causes a lot of trouble and so on and so forth, but he is not the reason why we find ourselves at this juncture. The whole tendency towards fascism that we have talked about on this program and on other programs and a lot over the years, and our persistence in believing that American capitalism is the be all and end all, and then also our bent towards Western Christianity, the American flavor, that is. You take those three things together and you come up with this toxic brew that puts us in the position that we're in. There's a whole bunch we need to talk about, but I wanted to sort of set the table there. The first thing I want to ask you about, and it's part of all those things I talked about, are these nominations for cabinet positions that Donald Trump has made. And the most famous one that has blown up on him already is this Matt Gaetz. I think I don't want to accuse anybody anything because I didn't see it happen, but I'm pretty sure it did. The guy who likes to have sex with 17-year-olds and show pictures of naked teenagers on the floor of the house and talk about his drug use and his business partner already being in jail for same. And then this Hegseth guy who is a Fox weekend host who has been nominated for Department of Defense, and he has some issues with sleeping with married women when their husbands are right down the hallway in hotels with the kids. And then this hypocrisy of the Republicans who don't seem to have any problem with women being sexually assaulted or if minimally uh, untoward relationships, right? Where Democrats seem to be able to really easily jettison people. Just ask Al Franken. He was shown holding his hands over somebody's boobs, never touched them. He was out of the Senate within a week. And these people can nominate people for some of the highest positions in the land. So I say all that to say, what the hell, Val? what the hell? What the actual hell are we talking about here that these
Well,
people
what,
can be
what,
nominated?
what we're talking about is somebody in the Trump administration, probably Trump himself, going off the rail and forgetting or not even caring about the real reasons we have nominations, the real reason that the Senate has a responsibility for advice and consent. The real reason we try to get the best people we possibly can to head up these agencies because of the awesome responsibility that the administration has to carry out the business for the people of the United States of America, and for the world for that matter. It's an awesome responsibility. So we got to make sure we have capable people in these jobs. In comes Trump. He shoves all that aside. He doesn't care about the capability. He thinks the government runs by itself. He thinks he needs people in these positions that's going to do his personal biddings. And number one on his personal bidding is retribution. He wants to get back at certain people. He wants to make it difficult for people he don't like to get what they want. So he puts these people he nominates these people into various positions, notwithstanding their capability for doing the job. Most of the people he nominated, not only are they not qualified, not only do they have records that probably couldn't pass a security clearance, but they would do harm to the agency and to the country because of their incapability of knowing anything about the job. I mean, you can go down the list. Gates, for AG, a guy that's one of the world's biggest criminals. He has no respect for the law. Hedgepeth, a guy you want to be in charge of defense. The American military budget is larger than all of the military budgets in the world combined. We are the world leader. We are the ruler. We are what Hitler wanted to be. We are Napoleon. We are Caesar. We are Pharaoh. We're all of that combined. And you're going to put a guy like this in charge of that military. It is unbelievable. What it speaks to is Trump has no respect for the awesome power, authority, and responsibility of the government of the United States of America. He thinks the government is only there to help businessmen make money. That's the way he sees it. And if it ain't about making money, it has no use. It has no value. That's why he talks about jettisoning NATO if they don't pay their fair share for being in there. It's all about money. That's all he's ever known. My favorite saying, he was born on third base, thought he hit a triple. All of that money he got, he squandered it and had to declare bankruptcy 4 or 5 times. And now he gets into a position that he uses his gravitas that he got from being a talk show host, from being a reality TV host, from being all of that. And he snookered the American people into voting for him for president of the United States. He knew he could do that, and he did it. But now, as I said on our last program, Ed, the dog barked loudly, and now the car has stopped. Now what?
Yeah, the dog caught the car. Listen, you mentioned this other thing about his total disrespect for norms and that kind of thing. Let's listen to Ted Lieu. He's a House of Representatives. He wants to introduce legislation to force background checks for some of these positions, and then we'll talk about it.
You say you are introducing this legislation because during his first presidency, Trump abused the security clearance process by appointing members of his own family to senior staff positions and gave staffers and family members access to classified information despite serious objections by career staff. What powers does your bill give Congress and the DOJ to guarantee appointees are properly vetted, and which current Trump picks are you particularly concerned about? Big question. Take it away.
Thank you, Alex, for your question. I'm honored to co-lead this legislation by Congressman Don Beyer, and our legislation will require FBI background checks for employees of the Executive Office of the President. These are high-level officials, and traditionally in both Democratic and Republican administrations, with the exception of Trump administration, people who have gone through FBI background checks. And if the incoming administration doesn't want to do this, then we have to ask, what are they hiding from the American people? Why don't they want these high-level appointees to go through the standard FBI background check? This is good governance. It shouldn't even be a partisan issue. It's simply common sense.
So, Val, there's very little time left here before Donald Trump takes office. Any legislation that gets introduced, it has little or no chance, particularly legislation that calls people to account and wants people to deal with, how to do things right. But one thing that's clear is that background checks have been a part of government service for a long time. You've gone through background checks. I have too. I've had a top secret clearance in the past. I'm sure you have too. And I currently have clearance now. It's not top secret at the moment because I don't need it. I have a sensitive clearance right now because some of the stuff I do. Val, what the hell? I mean, if you break that norm, right? What Trump is saying is, I can have damn near anybody because this fake department that they set up for Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, Doge, Department of Government Excellence, or whatever the hell they're calling it, efficiency, whatever, some made up stuff. They don't intend to make things more efficient. There have been things in the past. Bill Clinton had a department similar to that. I mean, George Bush had a department similar to that, supposedly to try to get the budget under control or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But here's the reality. Most of the spending that goes on is not within departments like, education and the housing and urban development. It's in departments of defense, right? And the other piece of it is paying entitlements, Social Security. So here's the reality. I think what they want to do is they want to change Social Security rules so you got to be 70 to retire. So Negroes are going to have a hard time with that one because we don't live that long. And the other place where they would make cuts is some of the other entitlements or some of the things that go along with Obamacare, which, they will find a way to take some of those things away, like subsidies or whatever, and cut that money, and will have no effect on the overall amount of government spending. So you tell me, Val, when this guy, Scott Turner, former NFL player, is being put up for housing and urban development, he may be able to pass a background check. I don't know. He worked in administration before as the Opportunity and Revitalization Council head, but now he's in the token Negro job, housing and urban development. And I will say it is the token Negro job, especially with Republicans. Negro gets one job, that's housing and urban development. What can a guy like Scott Turner do to cause damage? Because he's been in the Trump camp the whole time, but he's laid low. Byron Donalds and Tim Scott, the bootlickers, they got nothing. So should I be worried about this Scott Turner dude? Because I ain't worried about Byron Donalds and Tim Scott anymore because they ain't getting shit.
What they get will be nominal, and it'll be just something so that nobody will be able to say you really screwed over a guy who supported you a lot, Tim Scott. And Tim Scott's crazy enough, he'll come up on the air and says, look, I contacted the president and told him that I would not be available for a nomination. And they gave him that to say. They would give him that to say, you know what I mean? But I don't expect them to get anything worthwhile or anything like that. I agree with you 100% that has grown into being a Black job. The Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, the very first cabinet level position held by an African American was held by a gentleman who was where? In the Department of Housing and Urban Development. That has become the Black job. We took a person who was a neurosurgeon, a pediatric neurosurgeon, should have been in DHS or the Surgeon General or something, and they put him in HUD. Why? Because he was Black. And I'm wondering myself personally right now what his wife and others are saying about, hey, why do you think they put Scott Turner in that position? They put you in there, buddy, because they said you lived in the projects when you were young. What about Scott? Did he live in the projects? Why is it all of the Blacks over here in that position? And then maybe the light will turn on and says, oh, that's what they think Blacks can do. That's the only thing they think Blacks can do, But later on, after they cleaned their wheels upon that kind of stuff, you had, people are going to say, well, what about Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell, Secretary of State, and those kind of things, and many, many others? Well, but the whole glass ceiling had been broken long before that. And now we're right back at it again, because you got people in the Trump administration who really don't understand the racial and cultural problems that we face in the United States of America. They don't understand the history or the background. They don't even understand anything. Some of his handlers, some of Donald Trump's handlers, are putting these dog whistles in place to mollify the red meat MAGA people, okay? And at the same time, get some of these suburban women, white women out there to vote for us, because to vote for them, the Republicans, because we are not that bad on the racial issue, while behind the scenes they do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, Ed, what people are doing now, using, of all things, race as real background, under the surface reason to get things done. It's unbelievable. They're playing with fire.
Yeah, I think so too, Val. You know, before we get out of here, on the way out, you're going to see Reverend Al Sharpton talking on MSNBC about to Byron Donalds about why the hell he ain't been chosen for nothing, and so on and so forth. But when we come back, what I want to talk about, Val, is switch gears. I want to talk about the F around it and find out sort of aspect of this, that a lot of people are posting things online about all these MAGA people crying because they realize now that the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare are the same thing. They're not getting Christmas bonuses. They're getting laid off, so on and so forth. I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about how in some states they're trying to push some of the religious agenda, especially in a place like Oklahoma, and what the Secretary of Education is trying to do in Oklahoma. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Donald Trump, you talked about black men would be with you. Where's a black man being nominated by you for your cabinet? Has anyone noticed there's no black that has been nominated on his cabinet? That needs to be raised.
Reverend Al Sharpton criticizing President-elect Donald Trump for not nominating an African-American member for any cabinet position, I should say, yet. There are some spots to fill. Now, to be clear, he has picked some diverse candidates to be part of his overall team and also in his cabinet. But again, as of now, there's yet to be a black American picked for a cabinet-level slot. Joining me now, one of Trump's top allies on the Hill, Republican Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida. Congressman, you have been a very vocal and effective surrogate for Trump and for his campaign and, frankly, the Republican Party. What is your response to this criticism?
I think it's criticism where people are upset that they still lost this election. And so if you were going to ask Reverend Al or anybody else in the Democrat Party, they're still licking their wounds about the fact that this did not work out the way that they thought it was going to. That being said, Donald Trump's cabinet is about people who are going to implement his agenda. And he's not done, by the way. You have Susie Wiles, the first.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping. Maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
And welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It's Sunday, November 24th, 2024. Thanksgiving's on the way. I hope you got your turkey and it's starting to thaw out. We don't want no dry turkey, so I hope you know what to do with it. I'm not cooking this year, Val. I'm going down to my nieces, and I'm gonna lay around, let them cook, see what they do. Hopefully, y'all survive that. I like to cook myself, but I'm leaving it in their hands this year, so I'm looking forward to spend the time with my family. I hope everybody else is too. And Val, when I left, I said I wanted to talk about F around and find out. There's some people expressing regret. There's also some people that have been disinvited to Thanksgiving dinner. We've seen a lot of that. Let's take a look at a clip, and then we'll talk about it.
Judge, and I saw that Trump won. I'd pack my bags and get on the first flight to Nicaragua, because here's the other option. 6 a.m. ICE knocks on your door, puts you in a van, You haven't brushed your teeth. You haven't packed. Maybe your wife had already left for work. Where's she now? So they're going to put you in a van. They're going to take you to a military base where there's going to be hundreds of other migrants who aren't going to be very happy. And they're going to probably have you there for 3 to 4 weeks until they put you on a flight and send you back to Nicaragua. And then you have to do the walk of shame. If you go back on your own terms and you arrive at the village, you can say, you know what, Boston wasn't for me, didn't like the food, let me regale you with my adventures in Estados Unidos. You could do it that way, or you could do it the other way. It's their choice at this point.
And then Donald Trump's border czar made numerous appearances on Fox. Here's one of them that he made earlier in the day. And here he says that if you are in a blue state and you try to give any shelter to a migrant who is hiding, that the Trump administration will go after you in a blue state. Here, play this clip.
Real quickly, what happens to a mayor or a local police department chief that is under Democratic leadership that obstructs ICE in your federal agents that are helping get these deportations? What happens to them?
Well, first of all, if they don't want to help us get the hell out of the way, we're going to do it. If I got to send twice the amount of resources to that city, that's what we're going to do. If they would give us access to the jail, that would mean less agents in the community. For them pushing back and not letting us in the jail, it just means more agents are going to be in the community, so they're hurting themselves. Finally, I'll say this. They need to educate themselves. They need to review this. Title 8, United States Code 1324, III. Read about that and don't cross that line, because it is a felony to harbor and conceal an illegal alien from ICE. Read the statute, don't cross that line.
That's a warning from Tom Homan, right?
So, Val, there's a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube about not wanting Uncle Henry to come to dinner, and I didn't know what the tariff was. Can I take my vote back? So there's all this stuff on YouTube, right? Blah blah blah. The reality is, it's too late. We have what we have, right? For the next at least 2 years, there's going to be a Republican majority in the House and Senate. There's going to be a Republican running the executive branch. They've had that before. They had it in the first Trump term, and what we got was very extensive tax cuts that helped the wealthy, and then it eventually led to inflation and explosion of the debt and deficit, which nobody wants to talk about. That's the reality. And then you added on top of that the pandemic, which I think we can blame a lot on Donald Trump and his unwillingness to do anything about it when he knew what was going on. I mean, there's people in the administration who said, we told him, and he did not want the numbers on his hand, but he ended up getting the numbers on his hands anyway. 1 million plus Americans died, and a lot of them were Republicans. And everybody seems to have forgotten that, Val. So here's the question for you. Everybody keeps saying that people are going to F around and find out and they're going to be regretful or whatever. But hell, Americans have short memories. They act like they don't remember none of that shit that happened before. Will there be any buyer's remorse from Donald Trump winning this time? How bad does it have to get for people to say, well, this is too much, and then you see a change when we come to the midterm elections? What bad has to happen for people to change their mind?
Well, first of all, we have to properly identify why these people voted for Donald Trump. It had nothing to do with the economy, had a little bit to do with immigration, because the small part that it had to do with immigration is how that bled over into their dominant buying motive, which is race. And as long as that is the dominant buying motive, the thing that makes their cycle go, and Democrats keep thinking that it's something else, nothing's going to change. There will be no buyer's remorse, because the only way there can be buyer's remorse is if Trump start embracing DEI, CRT, bring back affirmative action. If Trump starts doing all of these things, then you get buyer's remorse, because now his base is saying, hey, I voted for you to keep all that stuff out. That's buyer's remorse. But to talk about the economy, inflation goes up and up and up right to the 26th election, they don't care about that. That's just a ruse to get guys like Val Atkinson and Ed Clark talking about it. That's all that is. They don't care about that kind of thing because they think they're going to make it anyway. Okay. And unfortunately, I watch a lot of TV and I see some Democrats buying into that nonsense. Adam Schiff was on a program this morning talking about, well, the Democrats have got to come up with a plan how to do some inflation reduction and let's bring down these prices. Let's take a look at the border and see what we can do. And I said, boy, you ain't learned nothing yet. But you will after about 3 or 4 or 5 more straight Republican victories at the ballot, at the voting places, with Republicans winning general elections. You'll find out then, because you think that the path to victory is to do another Al Frum. I'm talking about the guy, Al Frum, who started the DLC. The Democratic, what was that?
Leadership
Council, the DLC. And they started that because Republicans had won 3 straight general elections. And they thought that Democrats needed to move a little further to the right. And they elected Bill Clinton and Al Gore to run this thing, and they moved further to the right, and they won an election. My position is, why should you try to get things done that you want by becoming MAGA light or some kind of 2.0 version of Donald Trump? When it's time for you to step up to the plate, the people get tired of MAGA. They want to come to something that's authentic. Where is the Democratic Party? If you have moved to the right and you have become MAGA light, there ain't no Democratic Party. They don't have anywhere to go. So this stuff about moving to the right and coming up with answers to solve the inflation affected the whole world. The border is as it has been for decades and decades and decades on the Republicans and Democratic leadership. Okay? So let's wipe that off the table and let's talk about the real issue, which is MAGA. The old Tea Party people are afraid of losing white privilege, afraid of losing their culture. And I'm not going to be thrown aside by this red herring of finances and inflation and the border. And no, I'm not falling for that. You're worried about your culture. You're worried about your culture, and that's why things are going awry as they are, Ed.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, Val. And here's the other piece to it. The first thing that the Republicans want to talk about is one legislator from Delaware who's transgender, and they want to have a bathroom bill. Let's take a look at that, because I want to talk about the larger issue behind it.
I just want to make a statement for all of you here and be very clear. I was asked a question this morning at the leadership gaggle, and I rejected the premise because the answer is so obvious. For anybody who doesn't know my well-established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity. And so we can do and believe all those things at the same time. And I wanted to make that clear for everybody because there's lots of questions. But that's where I stand. I've stood there my whole life, and those are facts.
So Representative McBride, first transgender person in the House of Representatives, as far as we know, right?
Right.
Because you don't know. But anyway, that's identified as transgender. Nancy Mace from down in South Carolina way, right below us, seems to be really exercised about keeping this one person out of the women's bathroom. Whatever. What the hell? Here's the real issue here, Val, is that it is it's a component of the larger issue, which is American religious right having a stranglehold on politics. When we talk in the third segment, we're going to talk about Israel. It's part of that same thing. It's this idea that the baby Jesus is going to come back and he has a special relationship with the United States of America. And that this special relationship means that we should be a Christian nation, and whatever the hell that means. Now, that's irrespective of them, people like Hedgeseth screwing somebody's wife right down the hall, or Donald Trump sleeping with a porn star while his wife is pregnant, or Matt Gaetz screwing 17-year-olds. That's irrespective of that, right? Because, we don't want to talk about that. That don't count. What counts is the Secretary of the Department of Education in Oklahoma wants to pray for Donald Trump. Let's look at this video, and then we'll talk about the whole thing.
Last week, the Oklahoma Education Superintendent, Ryan Walters, issued an email directing public school districts to show students a bizarre video of himself praying for the president-elect Donald Trump. He also encourages students to join him in that prayer. The video is aimed at promoting his newly launched Office of Religious Liberty and Patriotism, which is housed within the state's Department of Education. Walters claims that the office will carry out Trump's educational agenda, including the Freedom to Pray initiative. The directive sparked instant backlash, with at least 7 school districts in Oklahoma refusing to comply with the order. And those 7 districts have the backing of the state's Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, who's a Republican. A spokesman for Drummond's office said, quote, "Not only is this edict unenforceable, it is contrary to parents' rights, local control, and individual free exercise rights." Walters' crusade to inject Christian nationalism into public schools is not new, and it comes at a time when Oklahoma's educational system ranks as the second worst in the country, according to U.S. News and World Report's 2024 review of public education. Just hours after releasing his prayer video, Walters' Oklahoma Education Department announced the purchase of more than 500 Bibles to be used in advanced placement government classes. And apparently, they're not just any Bibles. The Bibles are the Trump Bible.
So, Val, here's my problem. And I again, excuse me, folks at McLean Chapel Free Will Baptist Church in Belleville, North Carolina, where I'm a member. Don't take away my card, and don't take away my funeral plot, because I may need somewhere to be buried. But this persistence with trying to break the seal between church and state is going to be a persistent problem for America if we continue to let that drive policy. Why should any school district be forced to show a prayer for Donald Trump? I don't remember the Secretary of State of Oklahoma wanting to pray for Joe Biden when they claimed they were worried about him being old and infirmed, but they want to pray for Donald Trump. This theocracy nonsense, on top of the oligarchy, reverence for the oligarchy and people who have a lot of money, because Elon Musk has been elevated to sainthood. He has, I don't know how many different wives and baby mamas and all kind of nonsense going on in his house. Roger Stone, one of the architects of Donald Trump's whole thing, is a swinger. And we've talked about all the rapists and child molesters and sex offenders that they've nominated. Val, I don't want you to get in trouble with the good folks down in Johnson County, North Carolina, where you were born. But what is this bent? And it led a lot of black folks to the poll to vote because they were worried about stuff like transgender. When we look in retrospect, those transgender ads seem to have worked. And now that's the first thing the Republicans want to talk about when they start the term. What the hell, Val?
Well, I can tell you what it is. The Republicans know how to count. And they count all those evangelical votes. They count all of the Christian right votes. They know now that nobody's going to say anything when the Reverend gets up on the pulpit and say, we're going to have a march to the poll. They got souls to the poll. We're going to have a march to the poll, and everybody in this church is going to vote for Donald Trump. Somebody say amen. And it goes on from there. And Donald Trump and his boys are aware of this. You can't slap that in the face. I mean, just about every member of these whites only churches are registered to vote if they are eligible to be registered to vote. And they vote. That's a hell of a block. Somebody's got to understand that Hispanics only make up about 16% of the population in this country, and African Americans only make up about 12. That's 28. Where I went to school, most of all the other people are white. And if you got that big of a majority, and you can get the majority of that majority to swing with you, you can't lose. That's how the Republicans count. Sometimes people supporting our views on the progressive side of things and the liberal side of things, where I am, they get to thinking that, you know, our voting prowess is larger than what it is, because we've come out to vote and we get a lot of nominations and we got a lot of people in high places, even in the presidency and all of this stuff. We start acting like we are 33 to 45% of the vote in this country, or maybe even more, and we ain't. We're 12% of the population, and maybe not even 12% of the electorate. There's a difference between the two. Just because you are 38% of the population, or 39% like in Mississippi, it don't mean you're 39% of the electorate. I mean, registered people that go out to vote. In Mississippi, you may have 38% of the population. You're down in the 20s as far as the electorate.
Yeah.
So Republicans can count. And they go after those people who are voting age. And then the next piece is voting eligibility. Are they registered to vote? Then the next piece is, have they voted before? What is their voting record? How likely are they to vote? You get a seismo type of view in terms of looking at who should I go after. And the Christian right evangelical based kind of people, to get back to your original question, are the people that are at the top of this list. And they are there regardless of the Matt Gaetz, regardless of the Getsips, regardless of the Trumps, regardless of anybody else who've done all of these anti-Christian things. They don't care about it when it comes to voting. They're going to vote anyway. And they'll say, well, the good Lord forgives all of us. We are all with sin. So all of those men did all of those bad things. They're still God's children.
Except Bill Clinton, because he
except Bill Clinton. Can't do that. Not under the desk while you're sitting in the Oval Office. Okay.
No, you can do it in a hotel room, right?
You can do it in a hotel room, right?
Right down the hall from the main.
Or you can do it while your wife is delivering your child.
Right. Yeah.
But
that don't count.
That don't count. But not in the Oval Office under the desk.
Well, Val, I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to take a break. When we come back, I want to wrap this up. I want to talk about some international news that also has some implications on, obviously, about Israel and Russia. But I want to talk about something closer to home too. How North Carolina may have broken the supermajority and what that means in terms of national politics. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this, miss.
Such as the 2022 Carson v. Macon case, have set precedents requiring states with voucher programs to include religious schools, further eroding the long-cherished American principle of separation of church and state. Even states like Arizona, Florida, and Texas have expanded voucher programs, redirecting public funds to religious schools. Proposals to teach Christian history while banning books on racial injustice and LGBTQ plus themes are becoming more widespread and are expected to intensify under the next Trump term. The founding fathers, who themselves experienced religious persecution, crafted the First Amendment to ensure that America would be a nation where religious freedom could thrive without government interference. Reflecting on the dangers of state-imposed religion, Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1802, "I contemplate with sovereign reverence that that act of the whole American people, which declared that the legislature would make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state."
Welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. Sunday, November 24th, 2024. Val Atkinson is here. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We were talking about, of course, the Trump administration trying to transition and the first thing you have to do is pick a cabinet. They picked a menagerie of undesirables for positions. People like Scott Turner and Matt Gaetz and Ed Self and Pam Bondi, and we go down the list. We also talked about this desire on the part of the right to attach religion, a particular kind of religion, to in this desire to eliminate the separation of church and state in places like Oklahoma, who happens to be the worst school system in the United States of America. But the one thing they want to do is force children to have to endure a prayer for Donald Trump every morning, which is the craziest shit I ever heard, which really makes me believe that these people are fascists. But we can't say that, Val. People don't want us to say that.
Yeah.
We can't use the same breath to say that Donald Trump is dangerous. And beyond that, Val, here's the thing. We said it in the first segment. It's not Donald Trump. It's this desire to put people with a lot of money and a lot of influence squarely in power that can't be unseated. However, but this extends overseas. There's two conflicts going on. There's a lot of conflicts going on in the world. There's a lot of Negroes being killed in Africa in conflicts that we never talk about. There's people in Asia being killed in conflicts we never talk about. What we're most concerned about, first and foremost, is what's going on in Israel, and for good reason. The Palestinians, which a lot of them are Christians, which the idiots in America don't realize that, but the Palestinians are about to be wiped out. And one of the things that is likely to happen, Val, is that the next time somebody gets on a plane and flies to Israel from America, they'll be going to some resort in Gaza. There's a Trump Tower resort or Jared Kushner resort or Elon Musk resort, right? Because they will have totally destroyed Gaza. And under the guise of providing protection for the state of Israel, they will have eliminated a whole bunch of people. Now, there were some folks in Dearborn, Michigan, and other places who refused to vote for Kamala Harris, and they voted for Jill Stein or whoever because they said they just couldn't do it because Joe Biden is complicit in this. But you said it in the I think in the last segment, Val. The damn policy has been the same, regardless of who's been in power. That we have been supporters of Israel. So that's a long windup again. What the hell, Val? This policy is not going to change under Donald Trump for sure. I just laid out what's likely to happen. You got people like Mike Huckabee, who's going to be the ambassador to Israel. They've already moved the embassy to Jerusalem. The one thing that Palestinians were like, hold on, wait a minute. Really? They did that the last time. So what more can they do this time? What's going to happen with this continuing escalation, not only of the bombing in Lebanon, but almost a complete elimination of Gaza?
Well, I think what the long range goal is and what we'll see from the outside is you'll see the Israelis trying to fool the United States and everybody else that now, since they have done what they needed to do to Hezbollah and Hamas, that they are ready to now reconsider the notion for a two-state solution. Now, this two-state solution that they want to implement has to do with them determining what type of government and who runs the government of the other side. They will determine if that is a government that they can live with, if that is a government that they want on their borders. And if so, they will allow that government to exist, taking orders from either Tel Aviv or Washington. That's a puppet government. That's what I call it, okay? So you'll see a puppet government spring up, so pretending to be Palestinian. Jimmy Carter wrote a book, and you got the book because we talked about it here before. It's called Palestine Peace, Not Apartheid. And that's what I am afraid of, is that Israel is going to be so gung-ho about ensuring that Hamas or Hezbollah does not reemerge, that they are going to want to have a controlling interest in whatever Palestine does. You might as well just say, forget about Palestine. Palestine goes the way of the American Indian, okay? And the whole of that region belongs to, and forget about Gaza. Resolution 242 in the UN said that after the 6-day war, Israel should have given Gaza back, the Gaza Strip back to Egypt. They never did do that. So forget about that. The whole of Gaza belongs to Israel. The whole of what used to be Palestine prior to 1948 belongs to Israel. And if Israel wants some of Lebanon, they can have that too. Maybe half of it. So that they are not afraid of Hezbollah coming back and lobbing rockets into northern Israel. That's what I see as a solution in this. And people may think that's okay. But the idiots in this whole thing is Egypt and Saudi Arabia, because it's as though they didn't see what happened to Libya, that they are not aware of what happened to Iraq and Syria. They're not aware that Jordan has been a Western stooge ever since the boy married somebody from the West, the king of Jordan. They're not aware of all of that history. And they are going to suffer the consequences of all of this. Israel is one of the 9 countries on the face of the planet, Ed, that has nuclear weapons. The only one in the Middle East, if you want to call it, because Pakistan has nuclear weapons, but that's not the Middle East, okay? India has nuclear weapons, but that's the subcontinent of India. The rest of the people are 2 in the East that I call China and North Korea, and the rest are the West. The United States, the UK, and Great Britain and France. Those are all of the 9 countries that have nuclear weapons. And don't think that Israel won't use them if it comes down to it. Now, if I might slip right into a declaration that the Russians have made recently in their battle with Ukraine. They have changed their nuclear weapons use policy. And they have said that they will use nuclear weapons if they are attacked by Ukraine, supported by a country that has nuclear weapons. If Ukraine attacks deep inside of Russia, Moscow, for an example, using long-range weaponry that has been given to them by a country that has nuclear weapons, that gives Russia the right to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. Boy, I'm telling the whole world, you need to be sitting up straight and listen to this. We could be on the verge of World War III.
Yeah, and you know, Donald Trump has played right into the hands of Vladimir Putin, because he's said over and over that he can talk to Putin, that they have a good relationship. They don't have a relationship. First thing Putin did when Trump won is release pictures, nude pictures of Melania.
Right.
And you know, he called Trump and they had a conversation. Elon Musk was in the room, which is crazy to me. But Putin has shown no any indication that he's willing to ratchet down, because he knows he's getting his ass kicked by the Ukrainians.
Right.
They bring in North Korean troops, and Val, the last I heard, that even those North Korean troops were defecting to Ukraine. Out of the 10,000, almost a third of them have quit fighting when they got there, and a whole bunch of them got killed in the first round there. So the only way that Putin can win is if Donald Trump turns off the spigot, you know, in terms of weapons for Ukraine. That would mean UK or somebody else would have to pick up on it, France, one of those other countries. And then this threat of the using a bomb against Ukraine, which puts everybody in Europe in danger. Poland, Romania, Latvia, Estonia, all those people in danger, because you can't control where that radiation fallout is going to go, because the weapons that are around now are 100 times more powerful than what was ever dropped on Japan.
Right.
So you drop one on Kyiv, for example. Well, now you've put Belarus and all those other places in jeopardy. And that's one of the things I think was missing in the election, that could not get talked about, because Americans, let me be this delicate as possible, but Americans are stupid. They don't understand how all of this is interconnected. When Donald Trump says that he's going to apply tariffs to punish the Chinese, he's not doing tariffs to punish the Chinese. He's punishing American people and to keep them on his side. The same way he says that he's friends with Putin and he can end the war in 24 hours. Well, the way he ends the war is he cuts off the spigot of weapons, and the only way to do this would be to escalate towards World War III, because the UK or France would have to then allow the Ukrainians to use missiles into Russia to try to stop them from being completely overrun. And Donald Trump played right into the hands of Putin again. Right?
Okay, let me add one more little piece to that, Ed, that a lot of people are not aware of. There are 3 or 4 countries in Western Europe that don't own nuclear weapons, but hold nuclear weapons. They have allowed their land to be used by the United States to place our nuclear weapons in, so that, because they're short-range nuclear weapons, so that they could reach Russia without us using one of our long-range missiles shot from the United States. And, you know, to tell you the truth, one of them may surprise some people, is Germany. And nobody wants to believe that, but Germany has nuclear weapons within their geographical territories. The Netherlands, Belgium. So, you know, all is involved in this thing. If we start talking about the use of nuclear weapons, MAD comes into play, mutually assured destruction. There are no winners in this. The United States and the West has been playing this game for years, Ed, that their adversaries are more afraid of nuclear war than they are. There won't be any winners, but their adversaries are afraid of going back into the Stone Ages more so than we are. Who is more afraid of going back into the Stone Ages than people who live this crazy life on Broadway and, and live this crazy life thinking that, you know, Disneyland and Disney World are reality and everything else is fake, you know? Russia has already said that if the whole modernized world is destroyed, that their people and people like them could emerge from the Stone Ages faster than the metropolitan people in your major cities in the United States of America. And I think that's
Right.
correct.
Yeah, and that's what they're counting on. Our fear of losing the economic shit. I keep telling people all the time, Val, that our fear is not being able to go to Applebee's on Friday,
Right.
or buying shit from Amazon,
Right.
or buying a cyber truck from Elon Musk. That our aspirations are geared towards that, or geared towards going to heaven. I didn't say heaven. I said heaven. Going to the great up yonder. And so our aspirations don't match reality. And the last thing I have to say about this is, again, the white Western world has the whole entire other part of the world on the precipice of disaster because they can't seem to get along. And so the people that we ascribe to being Israeli are really are Eastern European folks who were dropped into Palestine. Now,
Right.
Mike Huckabee will disagree with me. He says there's never been such a place as Palestine, but I would argue that there was no exodus either from Egypt. I mean, there's no real historical record other than in the Bible, but of course, the Bible is absolute, and I ain't even going to get into that today.
Right.
So we'll get an expert on here at some point to explain how the Exodus is probably just apocryphal. But I digress. we got a few minutes left, Al. I want to swing all the way back to North Carolina where we live.
Okay.
And one of the things that was interesting in the election, the Democrats were able to hold on to executive power in North Carolina. But the problem is that the governor is usually fairly weak because you got to prevent what they call a supermajority in the House from being able to override a gubernatorial veto. And it looks like that may have happened here in North Carolina, and then also I saw that a lot of these referendum on women's rights and abortions passed. If it was a fair fight, you know, if it was a 50% or whatever, those things won. What does that tell you about the real ability of, say, in a place like North Carolina from falling completely off the cliff? Because Josh Stein is governor. You got Jeff Jackson as the attorney general, so on and so forth. You got people in council of state. The lieutenant governor is a Democrat now, Hunt. How is that going to offer some protection for the people in North Carolina? Will they be able to fight back some of this nonsense that's likely to come from the legislature in North Carolina?
Absolutely, because you have to compare where we are now with what we just came from when there was a majority on the Supreme Court of Appeals. The legislature had a super majority that could override the veto, make it, as the Japanese say, nayo, which means no good. So they had everything. And we've changed that quite a bit. We held on to the governor's mansion. We replaced the lieutenant governor with a Democrat. We maintained the attorney general's position there. So and we maintained the secretary of state. Those are the top positions. Okay, we lost the state auditor, but that's not a big issue there. But we maintained the top 4 positions on the council of state. The big winner could be, and it's not over yet because the ballots are still being counted here, is that if we pull the House back to a simple majority away from a supermajority, that means that the governor's veto, which in North Carolina takes 3/5 of the body to override. They would not have a supermajority in the House. They would still hold it in the Senate, but as most of us know, you need both the House and the Senate with a 3/5 majority to override the veto. So if they can't override the veto without some Democratic help, then it gets back to the way it always has been, that the executive branch still has power. That takes away a lot of the things that the Republicans want to do by fiat and, you might as well say martial law. So I think things are looking up for North Carolina, and we'll just see how it goes from here.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Val, here's the thing. We spend this hour every time we're on trying to, talk in context about stuff, right? I know people will say, well, Ed, you're full of shit on the right because they believe as vociferously as I do what they believe. What I'm going to tell you, if you're listening or watching, is Val and I generally come from a more learned point of view. There's always some history in here. We always have some context. We don't have this. I feel like there's a whole bunch of immigrants taking black jobs bullshit that you hear from the right, because it ain't true. A lot of the stuff they say is just to get you twisted and upset or whatever. When I'm telling you that there are people who want to eliminate the Affordable Care Act because a Negro has his name on it and they call it Obamacare, and that's the only thing they care about. There are some people. There are some racists. There are some fascists. Whatever. And for me to sit here and try to pretend like it's not, just to make you feel better, I'm not going to do it. To say that there's not a religious bent to some of this, that's dangerous and makes no sense, and that you play into the hand of oligarchs because they know that people who are hyper religious will forget common sense sometimes because they're trying to get to the hereafter. And I'm not going to play that game here. I'm going to tell you the truth. So what I'm asking you to do is tell your friends and neighbors about the deal with Ed Clark and Val Atkinson. Have them subscribe because we really love to have some more audience, and we're starting to gain audience all the time. I get ugly emails all the time, so please continue to do that. Ed at the deal with edclark.com. I don't mind getting them because that means you're listening. I like for you to, though, when you send me those ugly emails, to tell the truth, though. Have some basis in fact before you send them. That would be nice. But now, so Val, the last piece here is that one of the things that I am concerned about really, and I could chuckle a little bit, but part of what the Trump administration has said is that they will go after people who disagree with them in the media and other places. I do have a real fear that people like me and you, if we were on mainstream media, we would have a hard time. So that's why I'm fortunate we have our own website. So you can go to the dealwithedclark.com and subscribe, because we may not be on YouTube anymore. We may not be on Facebook and places like that. So that's why we maintain our own website. But you can go to all those places. So if you feel inclined, please subscribe. Please tell other people. Anyway, Val, before we leave, what do you got to tell me? What's coming up other than Thanksgiving? Anything you got to tell me?
Well, I'll if the creek don't rise and everything else is coordinated, I'll have a birthday here on Saturday, and I won't tell you how many times I'll be celebrating my 39th birthday, but it's several times that I'll be celebrating it on this coming Saturday. In addition to that, I'm into my coaching and I'm into my Parks and Rec Advisory Council and police and community advisory group. So I stay kind of busy, but never ever, folks, too busy to come and deal with the deal with Ed Clark and Val Atkinson, and I'll always do that. My latest book was just published in July, and it's the second edition of a book that was already published in 2018 called Distractions. I'll just use the short name for that. And I'm working on a fifth book now, or two of them, actually, and I can't determine which it deserves the most attention right now. Kind of working on them simultaneously, and most authors don't do that. but one is entitled The Civil War in 3D. And the 3D I'm talking about is the dimensions of the war, politics, and culture, and who won each dimension. It's very interesting. I'm an old Civil War buff, and I think people might enjoy that. The second one I'm working on is probably going to be the final one that I'll write. It's entitled Me, M-E. And of course, it's entitled Me because it's an autobiography. I don't have the kind of lifestyle that requires me to say it's my memoirs. So I just call it Me, my autobiography, okay? So I'll make that something that I'll get out after the Civil War in 3D. That's always been a hobby of mine. The wife and I spent time in Gettysburg and a few other places, Manassas, and so it's been a big thing, so I thought I'd write about it.
Well, I'm looking forward to both of those things. And folks, again, the reason why Val's on here is because he is a scholar and he's written about this stuff. He actually knows American history better than some of these other people who want to claim that we're being overrun by immigrants or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to go. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Come back with us the next time. Like I said, if you subscribe, then you never have to worry about when we're on. Sometimes we record on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. It just depends on the day of the week. Sometimes we do it in the middle of the week. It just depends on what our schedule is. Thanksgiving is next week, so we're going to take the week off. But the following week, we'll start our year in review stuff. So make sure you're around for the first week in December, where we start talking about all the stuff that's going on in the year. So go out and do something good for somebody today. And we really do mean that. And we'll see you next time. Bye.